guys. So, guess what? I finished the book. Took a while. I'm not actually a huge reader, but I do like to read every now and then. So, the yellow bookmark is as far as we had gotten in the book, and then all these other little tabs and everything are the things that I'm going to touch on this time. So, let's go ahead and just jump right in. I will say that overall, I think this is a good book, especially for a beginner, sure. There were definitely sections that I didn't care for. I mean, I have, at least at this point, no intentions of exhibiting my stamps or any of that kind of stuff. And reading the whole big chapter on exhibiting and how to put your stamps on an exhibit and all that stuff was kind of like, for me. But, yeah, somebody else might have loved that chapter, not me. But yeah, there was some stuff that I rolled my eyes at, and every now and then, something pops up in this Stamp Collecting for Dummies book that I was like, you know what, that was cool, I didn't know that. So, I highlighted this paragraph here, the letter carrier perspective of U.S. history. So let me read this to you. Collecting stamps as a hobby dates back to the 19th century. Prior to 1847, a person receiving mail would pay the postage, not the person sending it. In that year, the first U.S. postage stamp was issued expressly to prepay postage. Through 1851, stamp usage signified prepayment. Otherwise, the recipient paid. However, in 1851, postage prepayment was required. Interesting. Mail was different then. Mailings were mostly official, dealing with government matters or between businessmen. Very little mail at the time was personal. And actually, there was very little mail at all. So I can see why I highlighted that. That I thought was an interesting paragraph. So, in 1851, postage prepayment was required. So we're saying that even though the first U.S. adhesive postage stamp was released in 1847, it didn't become a requirement to prepay until 1851. I had never heard that before. So I thought that was an interesting piece of information. And also the whole thing that mail was mostly official, government and businessmen sending letters. Yeah, go figure. I never thought about that as well, that when it first started to kick off here, there really wasn't, it's not like the first day that, on 1851 they required it, that all of a sudden all of the general public just started slinging mail around. I mean, I guess it was kind of a slowly building kind of thing. Alrighty. So, next, the U.S. Postal Service takes total responsibility for all postage stamp designs. But the government agency does not review or accept unsolicited artwork. A great deal of the reason for this approach is the vast number of inquiries and suggestions received annually. What it does accept and even solicit are ideas for stamp subjects. The public suggests almost all subjects chosen to appear on U.S. stamps and postal stationery. Each year, Americans submit proposals on literally thousands of different topics to the Postal Service. Every stamp suggestion is considered, regardless who makes it or how it is presented. On behalf of the Postmaster General, the Citizens Stamp Advisory Committee, CSAC, is tasked with evaluating the merits of all stamp proposals. The committee's primary goal is to select subjects that are interesting and educational. The committee recommends only 25 or so stamp subjects each year. To get to that number, and to be certain each suggestion that the public makes is given equal consideration, the following 12 major areas have been adopted to guide subject selection. It is a general policy that the U.S. postage stamps and stationery feature primarily American or American-related subjects. U.S. postage cannot portray and thus honor a living person. Commemorative stamps or postal stationery items honoring individuals are usually issued on or in conjunction with significant anniversaries of their birth. But no postal item is issued sooner than 10 years after the individual's death. The only exception to the 10-year rule is the issuance of stamps honoring deceased U.S. presidents. They may be honored with a memorial stamp on the first birth anniversary following death. So I thought that was all good information. I never had considered how the U.S. Postal Service considers what stamps they're going to make. So, yeah, interesting that the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee selects subjects. I'd never heard of that, and I just wanted to share that in case any of you ever wondered about that. Let's see here. It continues. We're not done. Events of historical significance are considered for commemoration only on anniversaries in multiples of 50 years. Interesting. So they said it was 10 years for normal people after death, 1 year for presidents, and now we're talking for events of historical significance, 50 years. Only events and themes of widespread national appeal and significance are considered for commemoration. A philatelic or special postal cancellation, which may be arranged through the local postmaster, may recognize events or themes of local or regional significance. Stamps or stationery items are not issued to honor fraternal, political, sectarian, or service/charitable organizations. Stamps or stationery cannot be issued to promote or advertise commercial enterprises or products. So I guess you're never going to see a stamp for like the Swiffer Wet Jet or something, right? Commercial products or enterprises may, however, be used to illustrate more general concepts related to American culture. Stamps or stationery items cannot honor cities, towns, municipalities, counties, primary or secondary schools, hospitals, libraries, or similar institutions. Due to the limitations placed on annual postage programs and the vast number of such locales, organizations, and institutions in existence, it would be difficult to single out any one for commemoration. Fair enough. Requests for observance of statehood anniversaries are considered for commemorative postage stamps only at intervals of 50 years from the date of the state's first entry into the Union. Interesting. Requests for observance of other state-related or regional anniversaries are considered only as subjects for postal stationery and, again, only at intervals of 50 years from the date of the event. Stamps or stationery items are not issued to honor religious institutions or individuals whose principal achievements are associated with religious undertakings or beliefs. Stamps or postal stationery items with added values, referred to as semi-postals, are issued every 2 years in accordance with public law. Semi-postals are not considered as part of the commemorative program, and separate criteria apply. Requests for commemoration of universities and other institutions of higher education are considered only for stamped cards and only in connection with the 200th anniversary of their founding. No stamp is considered for issuance if one treating the same subject has been issued in the past 50 years. This is good, so they don't muddy things up with similar issues over and over within certain time periods. I think this is smart. The only exception to this rule are traditional themes such as national symbols or holidays. Anywho, ideas for stamp subjects that meet the criteria may be addressed to the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee over in some place in D.C. Subjects should be submitted at least 3 years in advance of the proposed date of issue to allow sufficient time for consideration and for design and production if the subject is approved. Although the U.S. Postal Service relies heavily on the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee, it has exclusive and final authority to determine both subject matter and designs for U.S. postal stamps and postal stationery. The task of converting an idea for a stamp subject to an actual design is not easy. If existing art is considered for reproduction, how it will appear in postage stamp size is critical. For many stamp designs, original art is commissioned that must be both attractive and a proper depiction of the concept of the stamp subject. No matter how much work goes into each design, liked and disliked by many, such as art. Yeah, interesting. Never thought of these different time frames that they consider certain releases, and interesting. You have to give your idea 3 years before the proposed date of release to give them sufficient time. These are things that I have never ever thought about, and that's why I highlighted them, because it never even crossed my mind. I mean, I've never gone intentionally looking for this information. Oh, sorry. But I thought it was cool to know. That was kind of a long blurb, but I think they'll get a little bit shorter. So, moving on. Stamps can take you on an entertaining and educational journey through history, art, politics, science, and society, because stamps commemorate the events, people, and achievements that have shaped our world and our lives. I like that sentence. That was it for this page. I just like that sentence, right? They really do. I mean, they touch history, art, politics, science, and society, events, people, achievements, all of these things that have shaped our world. Even the most mundane stamp probably has a subject with somewhat significant, background, history, meaning, something. They don't make stamps out of stupid crap. They're not just like, oh, here's a stamp about a pencil. They don't do that. The stamps commemorate something of some kind of importance. So yeah, that leads into the, each stamp has its own story to tell. Man, that's good. Okay, so I highlighted a little tiny paragraph here. Let's see what this says. It's about airmail. A faster service than regular mail, airmail is no longer a domestic service. For many years, however, the U.S. offered domestic airmail at a postage premium over ground service. Today, the U.S. still produces airmail stamps for international mail. Did not know that. Issued quite infrequently, airmail stamps have the word airmail as part of the stamp's inscription. Well, most of us have seen airmail stamps. Now, I actually wrote, some questions here on the side that I had, or thoughts. So let's see what I was thinking. Oh, so airmail service was discontinued in 1975. And I wrote a question, it looks like. Can I still use airmail envelopes and stamps from the past to mail internationally from the U.S. currently? And then, so that was a question I must have had when I first read that, since they stopped airmail, domestic airmail service. But they still send letters and mail on planes and by airmail. They just stopped issuing airmail specific stamps. Now it's almost like a general implication that it's going to be sent over a plane, unless you're mailing something very local, to a local address. I mean, pretty much anything that I were to mail internationally, or to a different state, or simply just far enough away that it would merit using air transportation, you can assume it's going to be airmail. And I say here, they say they are now sold as decorative use rather than practical use. So, I can still use them? I'm not sure. So, actually, I've looked this up since I wrote this question to myself. Can I still use airmail stamps? Can I, you guys? Can I? Okay, well, the answer of all things is yes. Believe it or not, yes. And because I have tons of airmail stamps, I have a bunch of unused airmail envelopes as well. Now, I don't know if any of you have thought about that, but can I mail, the ones with the blue and red checkered border that are actual airmail envelopes? Can you use that today to mail something? And as far as I'm concerned, the answer is yes. Now, I have, I think, either a picture on my phone of a resource that gave an answer to that, or I'll show you on my computer, but let me check here. Okay, so I did. I found this Stamporama.com. They had a nice discussion about this, about if older airmail stamps are good for postage. So, the reason that I say yes is because of what this one guy said. And he said airmail stamps are valid for postage. From the USPS Domestic Mail Manual, okay, he gave a quote, a paragraph here, which, if I'm not mistaken, is going to give us the answer for sure, right? He's quoting from the actual airmail manual, domestic airmail manual, or domestic. He's quoting from the domestic mail manual. Okay. All postage stamps issued by the United States since 1860, unless listed in a different section, are valid for postage from any point in the United States or from any other place where U.S. mail service operates. Now think about that. All postage stamps, with some exceptions that we'll discuss. Pre-canceled stamps may be used to pay regular postage and fees for extra services if the mail piece is endorsed under the standards for the first-class mail and service requested. Pre-canceled postage may be used only by permit holders authorized, unless accepted by the standard. The total postage affixed must equal at least the postage charge for the class of the mail, and if applicable, the fee for the extra service requested. All non-denominated postage and make-up price stamps, including official mail stamps, are valid at the original prices of use. Interesting. Okay, now, that being said, here's the section that talks about stamps that are actually still invalid for use. Says the following are not valid to pay postage for U.S. domestic or U.S. originated international mail. A. Postage due, special delivery, special handling, and certified mail stamps. So, not Every single stamp that's ever been released since 1860 can be used. There are exceptions, and this makes sense. I mean, postage due, like, we don't even deal with that anymore. Special delivery, special handling, these things, you just can't use them. Okay, you can't use B. Stamps from other countries. That's pretty basic. C. United Nations stamps. Unless on mail deposited at the United Nations in New York. So you can still use UN stamps, but you have to post them from the United Nations in New York. Wow, I never thought about that. Okay, D. U.S. stamps that are mutilated or defaced, cut from stamped envelopes, aerograms, or stamped cards, covered or coated in such a manner that the canceling or defacing marks cannot be printed onto the stamp, or overprinted with an unauthorized design message or some other marking. Okay. So, you can't have a whole bunch of stuff wrong with your stamp. Okay, E. Non-postage stamps such as migratory bird, hunting, and conservation stamps, U.S. saving, and thrift stamps. So that's the list of exceptions. So that means pretty much everything else you can use as U.S. postage. So what does this mean? This means that I can use a pre-printed stamped envelope as long as it's 1860 and after, right? I can use airmail envelopes. I can use even some pre-cancels, right? So this is all interesting to me. I wanted to share this because that was a big question that I did have, was can I use airmail stamps? I mean, can I hop into my album there and whip out an airmail stamp and use that today on a letter? And the answer is yes, you can. Now, I will say, I don't think that I saw them touch on... Okay, they don't say it in this paragraph, but, I mean, that was a quote from the actual U.S. Mail Manual. Now, if you're not a government official, you can't use official stamps. Okay, they didn't say that in there from what I remember reading it just now. So you need to have some common sense with when you're trying to use older stamps still. I mean, you know, so yeah, they said certified mail, special delivery, you know, special handling, like you can't use those. Okay, but they didn't say you can't use official mail stamps. Well, you should already know that you can't use official mail stamps unless you're like working for the government. That's the purpose of them. So you would fail today if you try to do that as a regular citizen, just regular Joe Schmo can't use official mail stamps. So I wanted to make that clear as well before somebody leaves a comment and says, "What the heck, Kyle? I believed you in your stamp collecting dummies video, and you said that all U.S. postage stamps." Well, except for those exceptions, okay? So, yeah, that means I can use pre-cancels. That's wild to me. I never would have thought of it. I don't even know if I would anyways, but, wow, I can use pre-cancels. I can't use United Nations stamps, except for going to New York. Special handling, special delivery, certified mail, stamps from other countries, yeah. But, yeah, see, they really didn't say about the official mail stuff, so I just wanted to make that clear. So that means I can use any U.S. stamp, and you too. Anybody in the U.S. can use any U.S. postage stamp issued after 1860, barring those exclusions, okay? So that's really cool to know. I mean, I'm going to have to try that. You know, I want to use some airmail stamps to mail an envelope. Maybe I'll mail a airmail envelope with airmail stamps. Supposedly it should be okay. I don't know why I thought that was wild. Just like, what? Considering they discontinued the service. So, however, it seems to be the case. I will have to test this out, and once I do, I will be sure to let you guys know how it goes. Okay, so the next page touches on postage dues, which is one of the exceptions that we were saying you can't use. I highlighted that the postage due stamp has fallen into disuse because it was replaced by a simple hand stamp that allows space to write in the amount of postage needed. So they just got rid of the stamps and just gave it an ink stamp for you to write what you need. Interesting. I didn't know that. Well, anyway, let's keep on cruising here. Okay, next thing. U.S. coil stamps produced since 1981 show a plate number appearing at the bottom of the stamp at certain intervals. The current common practice is to collect these plate number coil stamps in strips of 5 with the plate number on the middle stamp. So I'd never heard that. Oh, there's a motorcycle out there. So, interesting. So people collect coil stamps in strips of 5 with the plate number on the middle stamp. Okay. That's news to me. Okay. Okay, this one is a stamp collecting term you guys have probably come across, Satanant. So it says, this grouping features 2 or more unseparated stamps having different colors, denominations, or designs. Satanant is French for joined together. Satanant pairs, blocks, strips, and sheetlets have become a popular way to produce a larger number of different designs at one time, as well as to commemorate more people, places, or events with a single stamp issue. Yeah, so a lot of you have probably heard that Tête Bêche or Satanant. They're different, and yeah, so the Satanant, just a bunch of different designs joined together. But that is an interesting thought that when you do a Satanant release, you are able to commemorate multiple things at once using different stamp designs in a single issue. I think that's cool. I think it's cool. Okay, so... Oh, well. I guess here is you guys see that? An example of Satanant, right? See all the different actual designs on this one release? So there's an example for you. So that's pretty cool. Okay, moving on. Let's see what we got. Boy, I'm making short work of this. It took a lot longer to read. Okay, so this section here says, Postal administrations love stamp collectors. It says, the U.S. Postal Service regularly conducts market studies about what percentage of postage stamps sold are never used, and therefore are presumed to be in the hands of stamp collectors. Such studies have looked at the total number of stamps, broken the total into commemoratives and definitive stamps, and also checked on some specific issues with an eye toward how to plan future stamp issues. Even with all that checking, as long as postage stamps sold by the USPS remain in this country, the chance that the stamps will be used for postage still exists. Essentially, the money paid for them is not a total profit. Huh. Interesting that they're doing studies, yeah. How many of them get used versus collected. Yeah. That was it for that one. Alright. What's next? Okay, the next thing that I have highlighted here. Ballpoint pens. You must press hard to write. Therefore, you may leave an impression on anything under the pen's point. If you like detective stories, then you know how much of a trail a ballpoint pen can leave. Don't write on any stamps or covers with anything. That's a pretty general statement. Write on envelopes in which you keep the stamps or on slips of paper that you keep with the stamps. This is fair advice. Don't, like if you were going to put stamps in an envelope, to store them and write Spain. Well, I would write Spain on the envelope first and then put the stamps in. You don't want to press down on the stamps and leave the impression that a ballpoint pen would onto the stamps themselves inside the envelope. Just a thought. Okay. Clear plastic tape. Neither the permanent nor the removable type is good. This is so true. The permanent tape type leaves an easily visible and touchable residue that renders your stamp or covers valueless. Don't put tape on your stamps or covers, guys. Incidentally, the removable type of tape may leave the same residue. Tape and stamps don't mix at all. That is so freaking true. I can't tell you how much I hate when I buy stamps and they package them well, but my God, they taped everything like crazy. It can be really annoying. I'm sure most of you collectors out there have bought some stamps, and you're trying to take them off of the packaging or the little slit of cardboard they cut out to give it rigidity or whatever, and you're like bending your stamp trying to get off or something. I mean, my God, why do people use tape so much for stamp stuff? This actually reminds me of TED Talk Stamps. I don't know, a year or two ago, he had a video where he was talking about how he hates tape, and the exact same thing, that it totally annoys him that so many sellers tape everything like crazy when he buys a stamp, because he runs the risk of ruining the stamp just to get it out of the packaging. So something to be aware of. And he also said, he's like, to this day, I've never actually had an issue with stamps coming out of a glassine. Like, the flap closes pretty securely, and if you were to just simply put a stamp in a glassine envelope, put it in a regular letter envelope, and mail it, the odds of the stamp coming out of the glassine are almost none, right? It'd have to be handled extremely rough for the stamp to fall out. So basically, it's unnecessary. Like, if I sell a stamp, I've actually never done this, thank God, but if I sell a stamp, I won't do what most sellers do and put a stamp in a glassine envelope and then tape the flap closed. Unnecessary. Completely unnecessary. Don't need to do that. It's just an added extra step of baloney that you have to deal with. And like for that example, specifically, if you tape the glassine closed, you're probably going to ruin the glassine trying to open it and peel the tape off. Whereas if you just simply flap the top closed, just leave it like that, then the collector can actually reuse the glassine, and it's easier to get the stamp out. And yeah, so don't use tape, guys. Keep your tape away from stamps. It's Scotch tape. Okay. Masking tape. Although seemingly removable, the longer the tape is attached, the more permanent this tape becomes. I did not know that. Trying to remove dried up masking tape is not a pretty sight. This is a recording. Tape and stamps don't mix at all. Okay, well, whatever. Yeah, they don't mix. Keep your freaking tape away. Alright, paper clips. These all too common items, along with any other metal fasteners, leave creases in your paper items. If left attached for a long time, paper clips may also leave an oxidation residue. Rust is what we call it to us lowbrow readers. If you need to keep items together, keep them in something, a larger envelope perhaps, rather than holding them together with paper clips. Any marks left may downgrade the value of the stamp. I have absolutely come across in the collections that I have purchased envelopes that are paper clipped, and yeah, I mean, it absolutely leaves pretty sizable, noticeable indentations on the stamps inside. It's a bad idea. Don't use paper clips. Okay, peelable labels. Although the label may be removed, the residue may not be visible to the naked eye. Some types of labels degrade over time, and their residue may migrate beyond the stamp item which it was originally affixed. In other words, fear the migrating label. The adhesive is similar to removable tape. In case you missed the 2 previous warnings, tape and stamps don't mix at all. Okay, yeah, peelable labels. I will be honest that I am guilty of this. When I first started collecting, I still use these, but not, I was putting this kind of stuff, these easily removable, reusable little labels on covers. And this is when I was listing stuff in my stamp store. I would, if it was like the 56th cover that I had listed, I'd write C56. I'd stick that on the cover itself. And then that would be my, my stock number for when I go to sell it. But I actually did have to cancel a order that I'd received for like some first day cover that I put one of these on because when I went to peel off my stock number, it ripped the paper off the stamp. And I thought, oh my God, how stupid am I that I would put anything adhesive on the philatelic item I'm trying to sell? What a dummy. And on other covers as well, I've removed these labels and they haven't taken paper off, but you can see like I don't know what to say, discoloration where I had put the label on. So don't put any kind of adhesive, anything, directly onto a stamp or cover. It's a totally bad idea. That was a lesson I learned the hard way, and I read that in this book and thought that I would reiterate that to you guys because that's a real thing. Don't do it. It's a bad idea. If you're actually somebody who's out here and trying to sell stuff, you should put it in a glassine and then put a label on the glassine or just write on the glassine or whatever. Don't put adhesive labels on stuff directly. So, next. Photo albums. Okay? Photo albums. The magnetic pages are adhesive-coated papers that use PVC and acidic adhesives that enhance the rapid degradation of stamp paper. Whoa, so photo album pages are not meant to house stamps or covers, I would say in that case. It says also, the acid's capability to migrate to your stamps or covers attached to the page has been proven. Although you may not care how the back of your family photo appears, your postage stamp backs are important. Use only materials suitable for stamps and not something else merely because it appears to be a convenience. So, yeah. Doesn't matter if you have 100 photo albums hanging out and you're like, oh my God, this is a perfect opportunity to house my covers. Don't do it. They're not archival safe. They're not meant for philatelic material. I never thought about that. I don't even have any photo albums to spare, so I've never had a situation where I was even considering using one to house anything, but it's nice to know after reading that it's a bad idea and I definitely shouldn't. So I thought I'd share that. Next, rubber elastic bands. Oh, God. These frickin' things. If these are used to keep a group of envelopes together, you run the risk of leaving creases, other markings, or even tears. Further, rubber bands tend to degrade themselves in the air in a relatively short time, doing nothing good to the paper they are touching at the time. To keep stamps or covers together, use a larger envelope. Dear God, let me just say, that's a pet peeve of mine. Just like paper clips or something, tape. Man, rubber bands, what are people thinking? Man, I guess that they just don't know or aren't. I know there's no, probably malintention behind it. It's just, every time that I get a collection or I buy something and I find a chunk of envelopes that have been rubber banded together, my eyes roll in the back of my head. Like, why? I mean, you can visibly tell that the envelopes are smushed. It's just a horrible thing to do to any kind of philatelic material, slap a rubber band on it. And you know what? They're 100% correct about the rubber bands degrading. I have come across many items where it has degraded and like adhered itself to the envelope or something, and it's yellowed the envelope, it's stuck to it. It isn't a pretty thing. Don't use rubber bands. Rubber bands really have no place in your stamp collection. Get rid of them. Okay. Anyways, rubber cement. This may also induce a chemical reaction that will destroy the value of your material. Okay, well, I don't have rubber cement. I never would use it anyways, but I guess that was worth mentioning. Don't use rubber cement for anything. Okay, guys? Alright. Moving on. What's next? So, some people really serious about collecting all the world's stamps require the Scott International Album Series. That series, unique in the world, requires about 60 parts that number into the hundreds of pages each. I just thought that was interesting. That kind of makes me reflect on me over here. By the way, I've learned I have what's called a general collection, where I am not... I collect just such a broad spectrum of different things that I don't have... I'm missing the word at the moment, but like a specialized collection. Okay, there's plenty of people out there like, I only collect France from, 1850 to 1960, or, it's like very specific and specialized. Well, I collect all things from all countries, from all time, it's madness. And so I have what they call a general collection. I'm a general collector. And for me, I didn't know this when I first started collecting, but, maybe the Scott International Album Series could have been a good choice. All right? It's a huge undertaking still, and 60 parts. You're gonna use some shelf space. It's gonna be expensive to get all these albums, but if your intention was to try and collect the whole world, and I don't know if that includes backup book or any of that, but all the different countries, internationally, sounds like that would be a pretty good option to try and pursue. So, anyways, the Scott International Album Series. Okay, next. This section says paper quality. Stamps are made from exceptionally good paper. If the paper is stored properly, the stamp can probably last for something like 400 years. Holy crap, I've never thought about that. What quality paper are stamps actually made of? 400 years? That's pretty amazing. See, we haven't even reached enough time hasn't even passed since the original first postage stamps to hit the 400-year mark, where they would just kind of degrade on their own. Interesting. I wonder what will happen. What are we, 200 years or something, whatever-ish, into this thing here. And another 200 years, what is everyone's postage stamps going to look like? Even when they're stored properly. Interesting stuff. Never thought about it. I swear, I thought that was an interesting one. Never considered that. So it's just a really cool piece of info, I thought. Wow, so stamps are actually made out of really good quality paper. I would say at least most of them. The fact that many healthy old stamps are still around testifies to the long-lasting quality of the paper. Yeah, totally. Totally. I actually really love that piece of info right there. I had not thought about that ever. Okay, let's see here. So, shortwave UV light, in parentheses it says UV light bulbs are all properly marked is useful in detecting fluorescence and luminescence on stamps. Long-wave UV light is useful for spotting repairs to paper, attempts to remove a cancellation, or reconstructive surgery to a stamp. I also highlighted here that a long-wave UV lamp can bring a postal marking or ink to life that was thought to have been removed. Seeing the cancellation come up before you can give you an eerie feeling. So, this is a interesting point here. Let me grab my UV light. So, I'm sure it's been a while since I've used this. You guys, I'm sure most of you has at some point dealt with tagged stamps, phosphorescent stamps, what have you. And, I bought this UV light from Mystic, and it has 2 different wavelengths on it. See? 2 different wavelengths. And I always wondered, what was the point? Like, when I'm checking for tagged postage stamps, when I'm cataloging stamps, only one of the wavelengths would work to shine and make the tag stamps show. And I thought, well, then what the heck is the point of having 2 different wavelengths? Like, why do they even have the other option? Well, that explains it. For all those reasons they mentioned. I mean, I'm sorry, this is jogging my memory of stuff that I've read in this book about, bad practices, fraudulent stamps, stamp fakers and forgeries and stuff. They'll sometimes try to remove, they'll use certain chemicals to remove a pen cancel or an ink cancel on a stamp. And if you look at it under the right UV light wavelengths, you can still see that there was a cancel on the stamp. And this is one of the methods that expertisers use to detect forgeries and frauds. And so while it goes, they have better instruments and equipment than just a simple UV light. UV light is one of the things that they use to detect those issues, repairs, removed cancels, marks, that kind of stuff. Totally. So, like they're saying, it would give you an eerie feeling. I mean, so I have in front of me what I think is a mint stamp, and then I go and put it under some UV light, and I see a big nasty pen cancel on it, and go, how, oh my God, it's been tampered with, so, I thought that was interesting, so I just wanted to touch on that for a sec. I do love that UV light. That thing is nice. Not cheap, that thing, but now I understand why it has 2 wavelengths. So, anywho, moving on. Okay, so this next thing is about overprints. And I'm going to start a paragraph above what I thought I would. Let's see. So, the 1928 Molly Pitcher overprint, which is a U.S. stamp overprint, turned a common 2-cent definitive stamp depicting George Washington into an honor for the heroine of the Revolutionary War Battle of Monmouth. Mary Ludwig married John Casper Hayes, but she became known as Molly Pitcher because of the pitchers of water that she brought to the thirsty soldiers during the cruel Battle of Monmouth. Thus, that stamp is normally identified as the Molly Pitcher stamp, a commemorative stamp dressed as a definitive. So they overprinted a definitive with Molly Pitcher. I can almost picture it in my head. I've definitely seen that and said, what is Molly Pitcher? Wow, she was bringing pitchers of water to these soldiers. That wasn't even her real name. Ugh, didn't know that. So anyways, that was in 1928. Right? And it says, at about the same time, post office burglaries in Kansas and Nebraska prompted the post office department to authorize overprinting 11 issues from the then current definitive series with Kansas or Nebraska. They were available for sale in that state, and only Nebraska overprints were available for sale in Nebraska. We've all seen the Nebraska, Kansas overprints, and I never knew why they were so collectible or what was so special compared to all of the other overprints of different states that are similar. Okay. If stamps were stolen and taken across state lines, they could not be melded easily into the unoverprinted stamp supply of another state. Collectors know these stamps as the Kansas-Nebraska overprints. A single item might be called a 1-cent Kansas overprint. So anyways, yeah, I thought that was an interesting tidbit of information. Touching on the Kansas-Nebraska overprints, I just never knew any of the history behind them. And yeah, it was to prevent people from using them in different states. An intelligent overprint. Okay, so this last section is the glossary. Okay, whole bunch of terms. We go from A to Z. I didn't highlight all of them, just a good handful of them that I thought we should run through just for fun. So we're just going to go through some of these terms, and maybe you've heard of them, maybe you haven't. Some of them I hadn't heard of at all, and some I just thought were worth sharing. So we'll start with acacia gum. A water-soluble gum obtained from several species of the acacia tree, especially Acacia senegal and A. arabica, and used in the manufacture of adhesives. Well, so I've definitely heard the term acacia gum before. I didn't actually know it came from a tree, so I thought that was interesting. Next, accountable mail. Mail that requires the addressee's signature on receipt to provide proof of delivery. So, I've never heard it said like that, accountable mail. That was an interesting way of saying that. I mean, we still have, registered mail today that you have to sign for. So, registered mail would, in essence, be accountable mail. You have to sign for it and provide proof of delivery. Next, across the lines mails. U.S. Civil War term for mail carried by private express firms between the North and the South. So, if you're a Confederate collector or a Civil War collector, then you probably have heard that, but I never heard of that before. So, across the lines mails. Interesting. I just received the other day in the mail a brochure for the U.S. Civil War Philatelic Society, if I'm not mistaken. I never knew there was such a thing, and they've changed names over time, but now that's what they're called, I think, is the U.S. Civil War Philatelic Society. Excuse me if I'm wrong. But yeah, they're out there. If you guys are interested in Confederate stamps, they seem like a really nice society. I read the whole brochure and everything about it and considered joining. I decided not to. There's a point where I reach, a certain number of societies that I'm a member of, and it just gets a little crazy. Like, I'm already an APS member, now I'm a China Stamp Society member, and something else I can't remember. But I just think, I don't need to be a member of everything, but that one did tug on my interest, because I quite like Confederate stamps. I find them interesting. It's very interesting U.S. history. And I do have a small portion of my collection that is Confederate stuff. But anyways, I don't think I'm going to join the society. But if you guys wanted to learn, you want a history, you want good people to talk to about it, like a community for that stuff, check it out. Okay, next, albino. Dye impression on a stamp or stamped envelope where the ink has not been transferred to the paper. So a printing error. And they call it an albino. No ink got transferred. Interesting, hadn't heard that term. Okay, back stamp. A postmark applied to the back of incoming mail to show date and time of receipt at the receiving post office. On the back of the mail, see, that's what I thought was interesting. See, I always just call those CDS, circular date stamp, right? But it's, I guess, considered to be called a back stamp. Never heard that one. Okay, balloon mail. Mail carried by balloon. This method of transportation was used in the Siege of Paris during the War of 1870. And the letters carried are called balloon monte. So, yeah, anyway, I just thought that was cool. I mean, I swear I'd heard about that at some point, but it dissipated from my mind. Like, there was a point in time where people were sending mail by balloon. Okay. Bank mixture. A stamp assortment, usually on paper, collected from the incoming mail of financial institutions. We would call that a bank mixture? Huh. Okay. Okay. Next, bourse. A marketplace such as a stamp show where stamps are bought, sold, or exchanged. That's a bourse? So some kind of stamp marketplace. Never heard that one before. Alright, moving on. Alright, next one is changeling. An ink color change due to exposure to bright light, chemical fumes, heat, or other causes. Greens, reds, violets, and yellows are especially prone to change. So, we've all heard of, stamp colors fading, stamp shades changing over time. Of course, most people know light is a pretty big factor in that. That's why, really valuable, rare historical stamps, like the red cent, the 1 cent magenta or whatever, the 1 cent magenta. I heard that they would display that, at whatever museums only for a certain amount of time, and then they would take it off the display and put it back in the darkness to avoid overexposure to light. They don't want to damage it, right? So that's an example, but I'm sure most collectors, let's say, have come across changelings, where you look in the catalog and it says that it's light blue, or it says that it's blue, but it looks like it's light blue, and you go, what the heck is that? Yeah. Okay, next. Citizens Stamp Advisory Committee. Okay, we kind of touched on this already. A group of citizens appointed by the U.S. Postmaster General to review more than 40,000 suggestions for stamp subjects at the USPS each year. And, just a reminder, guys, that this book is from 2001, so that number may be different now, but even back then, that was a lot of suggestions per year. I can understand why they would need a committee to sort through all these things. Next, coil line pair. Pair of U.S. coil stamps showing a colored line caused by a gap where the curved printing plate is joined. Huh. And that's specifically coil stamps. So the line is where the curved printing plate joins together. That's called a coil line pair. Huh. We'll see if I can remember that in the future. Probably not. Alright, crash cover is the next. A cover saved from a plane, train, or other vehicle with a postal marking explaining the damaged condition. I don't have any crash covers. That would be super cool, though. And there's such a thing. Okay, next. Dead letter. Term for a mail item that is undeliverable due to a poor address or the addressee is deceased or untraceable. Boy, I can't remember. There's the dead letter. I don't think it's society or something. There's a committee or something like that deals with dead letters, or at least there used to be. And I remember that from my virtual tour of the Smithsonian Postal Museum that I made a video on. Yeah, I bet you there's a dead letter society. It sounds right. Don't quote me on that. Okay. Facsimile. A reproduction intended for souvenir value and not meant to defraud. Okay, so I highlighted that just because, of course, I've come across the term facsimile, but I think that the key point for me there was that it is for souvenir value and it's not meant to defraud anything. It's just a reproduction, right? All right, next, frank. An indication on the front of an envelope that it is to be carried free of postage. This is usually limited to official correspondence, such as that of members of Congress or the President, and it also applies to servicemen's mail while serving in war zones. Interesting that they're saying that frank is for an envelope that is free of postage, because on older stuff like my Papal States collection, I was calling them stampless letters and covers, and the ink stamps that they have, I was calling them frankings, because that's the term that I thought that was proper. They were before there was ever adhesive postage stamps. So, I thought that those kind of ink stamps that indicated the postage paid were called frankings. Now, maybe there's more to this term because I got that from the individual that actually made that collection. He referred to an awful lot of those as frankings, but this is saying that the letter's supposed to be carried for free. So a little conflicting in my mind. I'm sure that a lot of those ink stamps are still considered frankings, even though they indicate postage paid. But I'm not sure about that. That's just something that I guess I would have to look into more. Okay, next. Freak. I'm not talking about you. An irregularity in a stamp, such as color shifts, streaks, smears, double print, and so on. I don't know why, but I don't see the term freak a lot in the stamp collecting world. Something rings a bell in my head of freaks and oddities. That maybe was some kind of article I read at some point. But yeah, so some weird irregularity or something in a stamp, it's called a freak stamp. General collection. Here we are. This is what I was referring to earlier. A collection of the entire world rather than a specialized collection of one or more countries or topics. So yeah, I have a general collection myself. Next, hand-back service. A canceled cover or other item returned directly to the postal customer instead of processing it through the mail. So that's considered hand-back service. So they don't even process it, they just give it back directly to the postal customer. Okay, Sir Rowland Hill, the man who instituted the penny postage system in England and is considered the father of the postage stamp. I've heard the name, haven't read a whole lot of the history, but apparently this whole postage stamp thing came from his mind. It was his idea. Okay. Next, invisible gum. Colorless and tasteless gum on the reverse of a stamp. Well, okay, invisible gum, colorless and tasteless. I guess most gum on a lot of older stamps seems to have some kind of yellowish tint to it. Maybe that's the acacia gum. I don't know. But interesting that they specifically specify that some of the gum is colorless and tasteless. I mean, I don't know if I've ever really licked a stamp and thought about the taste. I've never noticed. I don't know. But there's such a thing. So, next. Jumbo stamps. Stamps with wide margins. Also referred to as boardwalk margins. Okay. Alright, moving on. Micro printing. Tiny lettering that appears as a message under magnification originated as a security device by postal administrations. So really small, incredibly minor microtype. They call it microprinting. And it was a security device. Alrighty, next. Mission Mixture. An assortment of low-quality stamps on paper sold by the pound and usually collected by a charitable mission or institution. Never heard of that. Alright, next. Mulready cover. Named for the designer of Britain's first postal envelope in 1839. The decorated postal stationery was so ridiculed that it had a short life. So, didn't last. And those are called Mulready covers. Wow, they hated the decorations so much, huh? Okay. Alright, next. Non-denominated stamp. A stamp without a value issued during a period of rate change. So we've all heard of like rate makeup stamps, right? So I've never thought about this either. This is why this was interesting to me. I mean, so they've actually released stamps that don't have any value, no denomination on them. 5 cent, 10 cent, just mute stamps that, because of the time period that they were issued, they left the denomination off. Interesting. Never heard of that one. Alright. Offices abroad. Postal agency of one country in another, usually because of the poor local postal network. Special stamps were usually overprinted for these offices, mainly from the country maintaining the office. Now, this is in quite a oddball. Sorry, I got an itch. Quite a oddball term here. It's not that rare, but I thought that was an interesting notion of. It's because of a poor local postal network. So, okay, moving on. Next. Optical Character Reader, or OCR, is a mail processing machine that reads an address and translates it into a sprayed-on barcode. So, yeah, on a lot of current mail, most letters actually, that you wouldn't pay for the, what do they call it, non-machinable postage fee, that do go through the machine, those are usually slapped with a barcode. And so interesting that it digitally would read the address and translate that into a barcode. So, next. Over or under inking. Stamps that have been that's how it says it. Stamps that have been received with more or less of one or more of the colors to complete the design. Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, the next one. Owls. Mail carriers in the magical world of Harry Potter. I just couldn't believe that they put that in here. I mean, what the heck? Is Harry Potter even that old? Back in 2001? What in the world? And I guess that they were just having a little fun, but I thought I'd share. Owls. Okay. Next. Phosphor. A chemical printed on stamps. When placed under ultraviolet light, phosphor causes an automated mail processing machine to react. Started in Great Britain in 1959, phosphor is used in many countries now for tagging on their stamps. Right. Okay, photogravure. Did I butcher that? A process where intaglio prints were made from flat plates having an irregular grain. Also known as gravure, it is most often used for multicolor stamps. Photogravure uses images broken into small dots. That reminds me of lithography. Huh. Okay, moving on. Plebiscite stamps. While a vote of the people is determining their national or political future, the town or district issues these temporary stamps. I've heard the term plebiscite, and I still don't even. I should go look up the definition of it, to be honest, but that's a decent explanation here. So they're waiting on a vote of the people to determine their political future. They issue temporary stamps. All right, next. Okay, this one is just to illustrate the differences between these two things. Postcard, okay, a privately produced small card without an imprinted stamp, often with a picture on one side and a space for a written message on the reverse. The maximum dimensions permitted are 4¼ inches high and 6 inches long. Now, this is different from a postal card. Cards with special printed stamps that don't exist as adhesive postage stamps. So there's a difference between postcards and postal cards. Now that's one that I'm sure already I'll struggle to remember the difference. I have absolutely heard the term postal card. I've had some people chime in on certain videos and say, hey, that's a postal card, not a postcard. I'm like, huh? What the heck? Well, there's such a thing. Okay, pseudo watermark. A device applied to stimulate a true watermark. Oh, simulate a true watermark. Sorry. So a device applied to simulate a true watermark is a pseudo watermark. Okay. All right, next. Quadrille. An album page ruled in faint squares as guides for making a variety of layout arrangements with stamps or covers. So, I've seen this before, and on some stuff that I've bought, and I always was kind of torn because I like that it's basically a grid pattern on a piece of paper, so you can line things up perfectly and position them neatly in an organized fashion. And when I would see pages of stamps that use a quadrille, I like how neat and organized and straight the stamps were on the page, but then the only downside for me is I think that the quadrille, the actual grid design, is a little bit ugly. But I guess that's just personal preference at the end of the day. But I have definitely heard the term quadrille. I thought that was a good explanation there, so in case none of you have heard that. Now next, regionals. They are definitive stamps issued by Great Britain since 1958 for the regions of Guernsey, Jersey, Isle of Man, Northern Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. The regionals are usually sold only in the assigned region, but are valid for postage throughout the country. So that's kind of a British term there, specifically, and interesting. Yeah, so if you had a stamp that was sold in Northern Ireland, you could still use it in Scotland, Wales, Jersey, Isle of Man, so on and so forth. So those are called regionals. All right, next, rocket mail. Experimental rockets with mail enclosed as a method of transport. Many of these covers also have special labels affixed for the occasion. Man, I've never seen any rocket mail in my collection. Maybe one. I don't know. I'm not sure. I've seen so many things at this point. Hard to remember, but how cool. What was the other one? Balloon mail, and now we have rocket mail. Jeez. Firing your mail by rocket. I think it's pretty cool. All right, next. Rouletting. The cutting of paper between stamps in order to make the separation of the stamps easier. In perforations, paper is actually removed from the sheet and punched holes, but rouletting creates the appearance of a series of dashes. Okay? I've definitely come across rouletted stamps before. I never actually thought of the purpose of rouletting instead of normal perforations. And I would believe that rouletting would make this stamp easier to pull apart, as instead of like a punched hole, it's more like a slit cut. So, interesting. Next, rural free delivery. Okay. Begun in 1896, brought daily mail delivery to residents living outside urban areas. Okay. That's called rural free delivery. So, yeah. Next, safety paper. A type of paper that has been prepared to make stamps hard to forge. A common form of safety paper has silk threads in it. Alright, moving on. Okay, SAS, I don't know how else to say this, SASE, is an acronym for Self-Addressed Stamped Envelope, which is an unused envelope addressed to the sender with return postage affixed. Many stamp correspondents will not reply unless you include a SAS. So, it's for them to send the mail back, right? So when like you send a stamp in to get expertized, oh no, first day covers is what I'm thinking of. So let's say you were interested in getting a first day cover for a new release, then I've read a lot of the time that they expect that you will send them a return envelope included with the cover that you want to be canceled for your first day cover. And so it makes it easy for the postmaster, whoever is canceling these first day covers, to do the cancel. Then they put it in the envelope that you've supplied that's already addressed and stamped, and they simply send it back to you. So anyway, I guess there's an acronym for that. Self-addressed stamped envelope. Alright. Moving on. Service indicator. Inscription included in the design of a stamp to indicate category of postal service to be rendered, such as bulk mail rate. I'm sorry. So yeah. So the inscription that indicates what the purpose of the mail is of that stamp. I guess that certified mail stamp or special handling stamp or registered mail or any of that would be air mail. All of those are, if they're inscribed on there, that's a service indicator. Okay, this makes sense. Not super hard to understand. Okay. Sheet watermark. A large watermark with only a portion showing on the stamp. Okay, so like when you have I guess like they say, a sheet or maybe even a press sheet, there's different ways, there's different kinds of watermarks. Sometimes you have a watermark that the entire watermark is printed on the back of each individual stamp, or if you have a sheet of stamps, maybe they just did one big design and you're not going to get the whole watermark. You might get just a little portion or something like that on the back of your stamp. So I guess it's up to them when they designed it. Did they choose, when they chose how to do the watermark on the stamp, did they just do like, one big giant US on a whole sheet of stamps? Or did they do US on the back of every individual stamp? That kind of idea. So anyway, yeah, that's called a sheet watermark. Alright, next, sheetlet. A small sheet of stamps, less than what is normally considered a usual sheet. In the United States, a normal sheet consists of 50 stamps, and a sheetlet would be sheets of less than that quantity. So that's considered a sheetlet. Next, slabbing. Encasing collectibles in containers after authentication and grading that shows evidence of any tampering. So slabbing, so when you get stamps graded, trying to remember who does that. I can't remember if it's PSE or something like that. There's companies out there that will grade your stamp and put it in, just like coins or anything else. They put it in kind of this plastic protective case that has a label or something special on it that if you break the seal, then they know that you've tampered with it. And so that's called slabbing. Yeah. You know what I see? I guess this probably would translate to bulk precious metals. Like when you buy gold bars or silver bars, let's say you got a 1 ounce gold bar, it'll often be encased in a protective cover, and a casing that is clear, and yeah, that's probably called slabbing as well. I was looking and I was dabbling into, bulk precious metals at some point. Gold is so expensive, gosh, but if you ever wanted to collect bars of silver, that's way more attainable, much more attainable, and you can actually build yourself a nice, almost a hedge fund of gold bars, of precious metal bars. Okay, so anyways, surtax is the next. The additional denomination on a semi-postal stamp over and above the amount that covers the postage. So specifically semi-postal. So, when you have your semi-postal stamp and it says, 15 plus 10, the plus 10 is your surtax. Okay? All right. Sweat box. A closed box using humidity to soften the gum on stamps that are stuck together, making separation from each other easier. So some people soak stamps when they're stuck together to separate them. Some people, use lighter fluid or whatever fluids. Apparently there's something called a sweat box that you use humidity to try and unstick the stamps. All right, next, tied. A stamp is considered tied when the cancellation is beyond the stamp onto the envelope. If the stamp is placed in its original position on the envelope, the cancellation lines fit like puzzle parts, proving the stamp originated on that cover. So yeah, when you half of the cancel's on the stamp and half is on the actual envelope, they're tied together to prove that was the original cancel. So interesting. Now next, tinted paper. Paper that has received a background tint before the paper is printed. Was that really worth mentioning? I don't know. Okay, anyway. Next, tongs. A tool used to handle stamps that look like a tweezer but has a round or spade tip and no serrations on the insides of the pincers. We're all pretty familiar with tongs. I've had people give me gruff that they're called tweezers. Well, here it is right in this book here, and maybe this is a U.S. thing, but I actually was second guessing that at some point. I'm like, well, they are like tweezers, like if you were going to pull a, what do you call that? Jesus Christ. Splinter out of your skin or something, you would use a pair of tweezers, right? Well, I mean, these are tongs, and I was always wondering, like, what is really the difference? But yeah, I mean, the spade tips, the rounded tips. I mean, when I think tweezer, I do think it has a little bit of a sharper tip, and that would be what you'd use to get a splinter out. And I wouldn't personally want to use tweezers on stamps. I think that's horrible. Matter of fact, every now and then I come across videos on YouTube of different YouTubers making videos, and they're using what I consider to be just normal tweezers on their stamps, and I hate it. I think there's some guy like, I don't want to call him out, but I think Silk on the Web or something like that. I see him using tweezers, and it grinds my gears. I'm like, ugh, don't use tweezers. What the heck? Like if this had a square, sharp tip, I don't want that anywhere near my stamps. So, yeah, that's the difference. These are called tongs. All right. Next, triptych. 3 stamps in a row with an interconnected and related design. Yeah, I'd never heard of that one before. Triptych. All right, next. Tropical gum. Gum discolored from its original issue by conditions that allowed for fungal growth. That's called tropical gum. Yeah, it's so humid out there in tropic places. Okay, next. Okay, it says Unadur. UNADDR, which is just short for unaddressed. I just never seen that abbreviation. So, anyways, there's such a thing, unaddressed, is UNADDR. Okay. Next, unit watermark. An arrangement so that a complete design appears on every sheet of paper. Maybe that's what I was talking about that whole sheet watermark. I guess there's something called unit watermark, and that the complete watermark would appear on every stamp. Although they're saying on every sheet of paper. I'm not sure. Anywho, let's just move on from that one. V-mail. Special forms and envelopes used by U.S. forces during World War II. It's considered V-mail. That's a new one to me. Alright, the final page. We're near done. Water-soluble ink. Ink on a stamp that dissolves when immersed in water. I don't think I know of any stamps that are issued with water-soluble ink. Okay, wire mark was the original term for watermark. I'd never heard that before. So, watermark is an evolution of wire mark? Alright, next. Wreck cover. Item of mail that has been salvaged from a shipwreck. That's cool. So, that's a wreck cover. And that does it. That was all of the cool stuff that I thought I'd share. And I'm glad to be done with that book. I've got some thoughts about this book that overall it's good. And if I were a brand new stamp collector, if you sat down and read this from cover to cover and didn't just skip over things, there actually is a good amount of info in this book. I mean, this covered a whole lot of stuff, and let me tell you, I skipped a lot of things. There was whole chapters that I read through, and they have good information, but I just didn't care for it. It wasn't of value to me. But maybe to somebody else it would be, just like the whole exhibiting chapter. It didn't matter to me, but I read it anyway. So yeah, great book. I'm surprised that there was many things that I had never heard of, and this is why we read and learn, right? So I have a thought about this book where maybe something I've never done is like a raffle or whatever, but maybe I could do a raffle and send this to the winner, whoever it may be, just for fun. So, if anybody wanted this book, I could do that. And I don't think it'll be specifically expensive to mail. I thought it'd be fun. Kind of cool. That way, if any of you guys out there are a beginning collector and you wanted to grab this book, you might have a chance to win it. We'll see if I end up doing that. Again, this book is kind of old at this point. It's 22 years old now. But a lot of the information is still relevant. But one thing that I thought was a little bit dumb was when this came out, Ask Phil was a huge thing on the internet still. So they reference Ask Phil websites and stuff so many times in this book, and most of the websites don't exist anymore, and nobody uses Ask Phil. I guess this was before Google. So, yeah, it's dated a little, but still has some valuable, worthwhile information, and overall I thought it was a good read, and I thought it was worth sharing some of these things with you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and what I'm actually moving on to next is I just got a Kindle Paperwhite e-reader, and so now that I'm done with this book, I'm moving on to other philatelic books, and I love the e-reader so far. It's absolutely fantastic. There's an awful lot of philatelic books on the Amazon Kindle store, surprisingly. And so I have already started reading a couple, and I am, just like this book, highlighting what I consider to be good information. And so even though this stamp collecting for dummies series is pretty much over with this video, this kind of video I do intend on continuing, although it will be with other books. So I don't read a whole lot. It takes time for me. I'm slow and casual, and part of that is when I read a book, especially an informational book, not just some fairy tale fictional storybook, I like to actually cognate. I like to comprehend. I'll read a paragraph 3 times. I want to actually understand and retain as well as I can the information. And so I read slowly. And I do that on purpose. I do that purposely. I can tell you that the one that I have started, oh God, I can't remember. Let me go get it. So I've started reading the book, the Philatelic Book of Secrets. I don't even know if you guys can see this here. Okay, about 21% through, and this is like the first chapter was. They covered regumming and reperforation, and I've already learned several things that I had no idea about. It goes pretty in depth. Now, I will say the only problem with this Paperwhite e-reader is it's not color, and they have several illustrations, and they'll be talking about key points and shade or something like that, and you can't really see the shade. That's the only downside to this e-reader that I can find. But most books are going to be words. They're not going to be actually... It's not going to be critical that it has color or not. It's just going to be reading the letters, right? So, yeah, I'm making my way through this. Fakes and Forgeries is where I'm at right now. And learning quite a lot. I had a total clicked in my head really well section where it was talking about how you can tell if something's been re-gummed and reperforated. And I was like, oh my God, that made so much sense. So yeah, I've been highlighting things, and I will put together another video in the future at some point of all of the goodies that I can pull out of that book to share with you guys. And yeah, I really do love this thing. I highly recommend it to people. There are other models, but they get more expensive. And, this is the most popular by far, the Kindle Paperwhite. You can get different amounts of gigabytes, so you can hold audiobooks and regular books. But I got like a 32 gigabyte or something like that. And that's like 20 or 30,000 books that this thing can store. Absolute madness. But amazingly, it could only store like 5 or something audio books. So, yeah, this isn't like the best for audiobook storage, but it does work. And I don't even know why you would store more than 5 audiobooks at a time. I mean, all you really need is 1 at a time, right? Anyways, this was like $150, and if you pay an extra $20, you don't have to get ads on the screen here. But as soon as you turn it on and swipe, the ads disappear. So I didn't want to spend the extra money. Who cares if on the off screen you have an ad? Plus, by the way, the battery life on this is like a month or more. It's crazy of use. Let's see where I'm at here. I've had it for 3 weeks or something, and I have used it, and I'm at 82% battery. Oh my God. The battery life on this is unlike any digital device I've ever seen. It lasts so long. Madness. Really cool thing. So anyways, that was it, guys. I'll stop rambling, but I just wanted to share that stuff just so that you guys are aware that, yep, the saga will continue with this in due time, this kind of video. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope some of you learned something out there. If any of you guys enjoyed this video, please like or subscribe. It really helps this channel, and it helps beat down that beast that is the YouTube algorithm. So I'll catch you next time. Take care, everybody. I'll see you. Bye.